Do you ever ask yourself, am I playing too small? Have I left it too late to start afresh? Will I come to the end of my life and feel that I somehow let myself down? This is your invitation to hear from some amazing people who have asked themselves those very same questions and chose to wake the F up, to get off the hamster wheel of mediocrity and seize the life that was calling them. Be inspired and be challenged to discover who you have the potential to become and the contribution you're here to make. And now, here to guide you on the most important quest of your life is your host, Janet Hogan.
My next guest is today the CEO of one of Australia's most popular and successful sporting clubs. But sport wasn't always his game. In fact, in a former life, he worked for a couple of banks. And to tell us about his transition from pushing pens to pushing athletes, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Paul Malcolm, CEO of Port Melbourne Football Club. Hello, Paul, and welcome to Wake the F Up.
Hi, Janet. Thanks for having me on.
I've been really looking forward to this conversation to talk to you about your transition and also how you've been managing the current situation with COVID and other issues that we're collectively facing. But I know that there are a lot of people out there who probably right now are thinking, am I in the right position? Am I doing the right job? Sitting on the fence of their life and maybe waiting for someone to give them a prompt to actually make that move. And I know that you were in that position once, Paul, where you were working in the corporate sector. Tell me, what was it that really prompted you at the end of the day to make that move? How were you feeling in that corporate position?
Yeah, look, I think I sort of got to a point where I felt really stuck and I wasn't able to do the things that I love and enjoy doing in a work sense. So, being able to help people lead by example, help others reach their goals and deliver outcomes that were going to help the customers of the banking industry that I was in. And so I had to make a decision whether to stay or go. We'd had a lot of restructures. It was impacting on people all the time. They were never sure what was going to happen next. As I said, they weren't able to deliver on their goals either. So I took the plunge and I moved into the sporting world out of corporate and working as a volunteer in swimming, and an opportunity came up with Swimming Australia. So I dived straight in and took on the role there and probably never looked back.
That's really interesting. So you mentioned that the atmosphere in the bank where you were working at the time, there was a lot of restructure. So it sounds like it was a fairly fearful time. People were worried about losing their job. Basically you made the move anyway. So how difficult was it to make the move? What were the kind of questions that, did you wake up at 3 a.m. and go, oh my God, have I made the right decision or not? What was going on in your mind at the time?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about that and having the self-doubt about whether it was the right thing to do. I sort of thought about moving to do something different and getting out of banking, and I dabbled in a bit more project management with other areas, but to get into sport where I felt I could make a difference and be able to lead the way and help other people reach their goals was key for me. And, I think the area that I was in at the banks it was bad. People were worried about what was happening with them, whether they were going to have a job in another 6 months. Would there be another restructure? Who would their new boss be if it wasn't me or someone else? And it was just very uncomfortable, an uncomfortable place to be. They weren't delivering for the customers like they were saying they would out in the media. They were stopping people from delivering on things that were key to business. So it was just the right time to get out. I double checked and kept checking with myself about whether it was right or wrong. And obviously there was a bit of pain in financially and also the risk of going to something new. And what if it doesn't work? What's going to happen? How does that impact me and my friends and my family? So they were all things that I had to keep considering and and I guess at the end of the day and looking back, 4 years later, I should have done it sooner.
Right. That's interesting. So it sounds like, and I hear this, I've heard this before too, that there might have been a misalignment between what you felt you stood for and what you were able to deliver in that environment. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I always set out to be able to improve where I am and leave something in a better place, whether that's the people I'm working with or work that are working for me, or just by making the changes and delivering on the activities that are to going to make it better. So it was just a place where you couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah, and you mentioned making a difference was really important. So was that really the thing, do you feel, Paul, that pulled you across the line in the end, that it was something bigger than you, that you wanted to make a positive impact on the lives of others? Do you think that's where you got your courage from to make the move?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as I said, I was enjoying working as a volunteer in the swimming space at Swimming Victoria. And I knew that the type of things Swimming Australia and the states were trying to achieve were things that I could be part of, and that things that would help athletes or coaches or parents within the sport and within that industry. So, yeah, I took the plunge, and as I said, I've never looked back. It gave me a really good opportunity to readjust, get back into doing things that I was passionate about, and helping other people.
And what about the financial side of things? Because you said you took a pay cut. How did that play out? How big a problem was that at the end of the day?
Probably not. I say not a problem, but obviously I just had to adjust, and obviously myself and family needed to adjust. It was pretty much sort of, with bonus and everything, pretty much a half cut to what I was on in the corporate world to what sporting was. But obviously I made that decision at that point that money's not everything. Comfort and happiness and being able to do things that are important to you far outweigh the material aspect. So whilst, yeah, we had a little bit of adjustment at the start, it was probably an easy decision anyway.
And how did it affect your relationships? Because I talk to guys in particular, particularly if they've been wedded to their job for most of their lives, and that's where their identity is tied up in. There's almost sometimes a fear of going back or going back to the family, if you like. It's almost like in some cases, their partners can feel like strangers. So how did all of that affect your relationships with your partner and your kids?
Yeah, look, it gave me more time. Obviously, I'd been volunteering and probably doing 20 or 30 hours a week, and then I was working 40 to 50 hours a week with corporate in the bank. So it gave me a whole heap of more time to do things, both family-wise, but also just for myself, to be able to get out and spend a bit more time with the kids, get out with my wife and spend more time, or just go and play golf with my mates. And re-engage with some other mates. And obviously my other passion's footy, so I was able to go and watch some more football and do some different things in that space as well.
And so it sounds like it's been a really good move, for you on all those external circumstances. What about you personally? How have you changed from going from the corporate sector to work to something that you're really passionate about? What's been the impact on you, Paul?
I think for me, it's been, as I said, getting into swimming. It was a very strong space that I was involved in with the kids, and obviously volunteering, and to be able to work in a space of a passion that you really enjoy just puts a whole new outlook on your own life. And, then moving into the football space, again, something that I grew up in, I've always enjoyed, I've always been passionate about the sport. And those two things have been passionate about where you're working, being passionate about the industry you're in, and being able to help people sort of ticks a lot of my boxes. So it's just put me in a much better mindset and a much better space. I think I've actually probably grown as a leader and as a person, and I think that's sort of helped me in my personal life as much as it has in my professional life.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You talk about the other aspect, being able to help others. It sounds like that might have been the ingredient that was missing in the corporate sector. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it just all avenues of trying to help staff and colleagues to grow and deliver on their goals and their achievements was taken away by all the rapid change and the lack of understanding where things were going to land. So, obviously being in this space, there's a lot of opportunity either with staff or athletes or coaches, volunteers to help them reach their goals.
Yeah. What, I know sometimes if you use the words, I want to be of service. And this even triggered me, back when I was running my various businesses. I thought, but I don't want to be Mother Teresa. I don't want to be sacrificing myself in service to others. So what would you say to that, Paul? How's your experience with that?
Yeah, I think that's sort of, I guess, the part of the corporate world was that you were just servicing someone else all the time. And when there's so much change going on, you're trying to second guess exactly what they're going to want. And obviously some of my management at the time were also suffering the same sort of problems and feelings. So it was a really unstable place. You bring that back now. So I service the board of the football club in my role and my team's role, but I'm doing it in a really fun way and enjoying it. We've got a really good relationship. You have the hard decisions and you have the hard conversations, but at the end of the day, we're really clear as an organisation what our goals and achievements are that we want to hit. So being able to deliver on those, you come to work every day and enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. What I'm hearing from you, there's a lot of passion in what you do, and it comes through in just the energy, the way you speak. And my experience running businesses was there's a lot of self-sacrifice, and I think that applies for men just as much as women, that we can give of ourselves too much because we think we're doing it for a good cause. And in fact, all we're doing is depleting ourselves, and then we get bitter and resentful, if we do that for too long. So what I get from your story is that you were following your heart essentially, and what you felt that you wanted to do. So in that sense, it was really serving yourself first so that you could serve others. Does that sound like a good interpretation of what you've said? Is that how you feel it's that the journey's been about?
Yeah, I think so. I totally agree with that. I think, it was just about, as I said earlier, about resetting my own goals and my own direction and being a little bit more selfish and looking after myself first, which then obviously helped my family and friends, and then back into doing the role and getting into it.
Yeah. What would you say to someone, maybe there's someone who's back in that bank job you used to have, and they feel the same way that you do, but they don't have an obvious passion, like they're not really clear on what a better life could look like for them. What advice would you give them?
I think you've just got to continually, I guess, reevaluate where you're at and what you want to do. I looked at some other roles along the way and did some other bits and pieces did a bit of contracting, when I left ANZ, and then ended up back at NAB contracting and then full time. And if you can find, it may even be within the same company or the same organisation, where you just find a different avenue, a different role, slightly different area where you're doing something a little bit different that may just be enough spark. But it's really just work out what works well for you, positives and negatives, do the old stress check on that, and then make the chance, take the opportunity. In hindsight, it's a very easy thing to say, I should have done it earlier and I should have jumped in a lot earlier, but you get scared and the fears there about what if it doesn't work, what if I fail, what if I let people down? And sometimes you just got to back yourself and say, well, it's about me, I'll do it.
I like that. Noble selfishness. It works, doesn't it? I know the opposite. Martyr syndrome is not a formula for success, because I've been in that space for a long time. What about, Paul, the importance of mindset? You mentioned fear. What kind of personal demons did you have to face and ultimately, step through to get to where you got to?
I think the bulk of it's around self-doubt and just, backing yourself and feeling comfortable to make that change. It happens, people, human beings are creatures of comfort and they don't like change. So I was working in projects and delivering change, and there was a lot of good times and a lot of good stories to come out of that. But when it becomes about yourself and what you're going to do, the fear's there that you'll fail, that you'll let people down, that you won't deliver. What if I'm no good at that job and then I have to try and go back to my old roots and where I was comfortable? So it's just making sure you challenge yourself. And if you can challenge yourself in everyday activity, you'll at least then be prepared to do the next step. It's like, you go home and you decide to change the color of the paint of your house. But so you check through all the different scenarios and you fight yourself to pick the right color. It's the same in work and the same in life. You need to look at what's best for you next and then take that challenge on.
Thank you for sharing that. I totally get that about you. It's probably one of the funny things about fear is that some of the people that you run into seem like the least fearful people, like yourself, and yet they talk quite openly about it. What for you has been like the hardest moment, the place where that self-doubt really spoke to you, to a point where, it was seriously challenging you? Did you have a moment like that?
Yeah, I think obviously when I was in banking and all those changes were happening and continually feeling as though you're letting your team down and other people around you down because you're not, the things I said I wanted to do, to be able to lead by example or to provide them with their support to be able to reach their goals and achievements. and making sure, that you make a difference. And when you can't do that, you start to doubt yourself. Is it something you're doing? Is it your ability? Or is it actually the things around you that are stopping you from doing that? And I think that's where I started to get into that place of, well, I'm just down on myself. I'm not able to do what I want to do. I started to sort of spiral a little bit on just being a bit more negative and really starting to worry about impact on everything else. And so that sort of helped me make that decision to move as well.
Yeah, you could see yourself getting into that negative loop and realize it wasn't helping you or others. Yeah. What about, speaking of negative loops, there are a lot of challenges going on right now. So as we record this, Victoria's still in lockdown for, what was it, another 6 weeks?
Yeah.
And then there was a little earthquake today as well. So it feels like someone up there is testing humanity right now. What are some of the challenges that you've had to face more recently, Paul?
Look, I think obviously COVID's impacted everybody worldwide, and in Victoria, it's no different. We've had plenty of impact by that. And one of the key things for me was I started this role as CEO in December 2019, and COVID hit in March 2020. So my whole first year at working at a football club, we had no football. So that was very unique in having to set things up for the club, but there was just no footy, and so our core business was out the window. So obviously that had a massive impact on me as well. And so having to adapt and become very adaptable.
Yeah. What are some of the things, that's pretty extreme, isn't it? It's one thing having to close a restaurant, but it's another where you've got the team, you've got the spectators, you've got the management, all these different things that you're responsible for. So what are some of the strategies that you adopted to navigate through this, these weird times that we live in?
Yeah, look, we obviously had to make some changes staffing wise and make sure that we sort of reduced hours, and we had the JobKeeper from the government to help us survive on that. But we just had to refocus. And one of the things that happened is as soon as vaccination became available, we worked with our local Port Melbourne Medical Clinic and got them into our event centre. And so they've set up a COVID vaccination clinic here. So that's meant that we're getting a different type of revenue stream in, which is helping us obviously survive and make a profit for the year. But yeah, it was just really about doing those different things, working with the board, the players, the coaches and the members to be more dynamic and more adaptable to change on very short notice. So we were sort of trying to get to training and then not training and playing and not playing, but we had to keep making changes on the fly. And so the way we did that was just a lot more communication. Through COVID, I started to do weekly updates out to the members, which were just written material going out on the website and emails and social media. And then one day I decided to do a video, and I don't like video myself. I don't like being out doing public speaking. It's not something that has ever come very natural to me. So to sit there and video, I found that I started to get really good feedback. I started to get a lot more people email me or contact me to say, thanks for the update. It's really great. So I've had to adapt myself and start to do videos more often. I was doing them quite regularly. I've sort of dropped back a little bit now, mixing up between written and video just to have a bit of difference. And plus people get sick of seeing the same person, but it obviously worked for me. So people were really keen to see those. And that was probably one of the biggest things was the way we communicated with our members and players and sponsors and supporters was key to us getting through this difficult time, and still is. Yeah,
just maintaining that consistency. I get that too, that feeling that we really need something solid that we can depend on in the face of so much uncertainty. What about, it was interesting how you did that you saw the opportunity in the vaccination centre there. How do you feel even though the corporate world seems so unrelated to what you're doing now, how has it actually served you? Your experience with the banks, how do you feel that you draw on that now in your current role?
I think obviously, as I said, I spent a lot of time doing project management and rolling out programs of all different sizes, both locally and internationally. And I think being able to structure yourself, set your clear goals, set up your targets for things you want to achieve. So being able to work with our board and say, we need to look at a new revenue stream. Our revenue stream has been membership, match day takings. and government grants and sponsorship. But all of that is suffering. So we need to find another way to get revenue in. So you just look at things differently purely because of that change management, project management background that I've grown up in.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So maybe even though part of you is saying, I wish I'd made the move earlier, maybe you made it at the perfect time, you know?
Yeah, possibly.
You needed to accumulate that experience. I mean, I often look back on my checkered background, you know, running an advertising agency, a restaurant, doing real estate development, and a wedding business. And I go, you know, what was I even thinking? But if I look at each position, I really did get something of great value that actually is serving me now, even though I wouldn't have done a university course in my particular career path, but it has really served me. So yeah, who's to say that maybe, you know, the path that we're on is perfect, even though it doesn't feel so sometimes. Actually on that subject, Paul, I invited you to do the Magic Triangle quiz, which really does speak to people's paths, because I know when I was in business, in our wedding business, we hired a coach, and he was very keen on getting us to set goals. And I remember back in the day, you know, the goal would be, oh, I'd like a pool table, or I'd like a new car, or I'd like to renovate the house or go on a holiday. It was really in the kind of the material space that we were really encouraged to focus. And what I found is either A, we wouldn't get the goal, or B, we would, and then we go, oh, I still feel shitty. What's that about? You know? So the idea with this exercise is to go to if you like, a different part of ourselves. I like to call it the innermost self, or the intuitive self, you know, that part of us that actually knows us better than we do. And in that process, choose 3 core needs that you feel are really vital to your future, you know, happiness and fulfillment. So let's go through that. So just sharing now what you came up with. So experience, respect, and making a difference. And so what I'd like to do is just run through each of those, just asking you, Paul, what does that particular core need mean for you, and why do you think it made it to that top 3? So let's just start with experience. Tell us about that. What does experience mean to you?
Doing different things to get new learnings, and being able to then share those with other people and build the way your pathway around those. So obviously you're going to have some really great, rich experiences, and you're going to have some very bad and poor experiences. And if you can grow yourself and learn from the poor ones, and then help yourself to move forward with the better ones, then I think that's what that sort of means to me. And as I said, especially that, have the experience, live the experience, and then share that experience.
Yeah, I like that you've included the bad experiences in that too, because they are such great learning opportunities. And I know that, you know, the opposite to that, if I just speak personally here, is probably what we can do if we get scared of experience and stepping outside of our comfort zone, is we can try and numb ourselves out and almost like, you know, grip hold of the comfort zone and not want to let go of that. And of course, that then denies us new experience and denies us that growth. So I like the link you've made there between experience and growth, particularly from, you know, the uncomfortable experiences. Yeah. What about respect? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think I always sort of build my philosophy and going through all facets of life is around gaining people's respect, but also respecting others. So whether it's respecting the environment or the role you're doing, or just respecting people in general and their feelings and what their goals and determination is. I think if everybody shows that respect, we can all move forward a lot better and a lot more comfortable, and you build much better relationships and you leave much better experiences behind if there's a lot of respect either way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's as easy as just respecting the place you're in and the things you're doing, respecting the other people. Driving a car, respect the other drivers. You know, walking along the street, respecting other people's feelings and how they feel.
Yeah. Oh, and what does that give you, Paul, when you bring more respect into your life? How does that make you feel in your experience?
I think you get a much better sense of self-achievement and understanding how other people feel. If you're respected, you feel really good. So again, it's that experience of being respected and treated well, then you respect and treat other people.
Yeah. I am hearing what you're saying also. It almost sounds like developing empathy too, like really starting to understand what it's like where possible to be in someone else's shoes. Would you say that it speaks to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I feel that's so important now because I see how quickly we can become divided as a society. Have you noticed that? That, it almost seems to be the way social media and media generally seems to be directing us to say what side of the fence are you standing on?
Yeah, absolutely. For the last 4 days, we've had protests and mini riots going on in the streets from people who are anti-vaccination, or they're just not happy with being locked down, and there's a lot of call out at the moment through social media for our frontline staff and our frontline people to be more respected and stay at home, stay safe, and look after them. Don't go out and riot and protest and spread the virus, which then puts more pressure on our hospitals and our frontline staffing. So, again, it just shows another importance of that whole respect and do the right thing.
Yeah, and moving away from criticism and judgment. Yeah. Okay, so the final one is making a difference, and that's already come up in the conversation. I totally get that from you, that it's in your DNA, but could you speak to us about that, making a difference? What does that mean for you? What would you like when you look back on your life, what would you like your legacy to be?
So I think I like, no matter what I'm doing, whether it's personal or in work or in sport or just with a bunch of mates, doing things, you want to make a difference and leave something better than when you found it, or better than when you started there. So that's always sort of been one of my key goals and key philosophies is whatever I do, make sure when I've finished that it's better than what it was in the past, and you've at least helped improve it or make a change. You can't always fix everything. You can't always super improve everything, but as long as it's gone along better and it's worked better for you. So yeah, making a difference in the way I approach my work, the way that others around me are able to achieve their goals, means if I can help them lead and direct and give them the support and share my experiences and knowledge, then hopefully I've left them in a better place. So it's making a difference. Obviously, in a sporting world, you want everyone, your athletes, your coaches, your supporters, your volunteers, all to succeed at what they're trying to achieve. So if I can help that in some small way, then I feel rewarded by that.
Yeah. What about going bigger picture with that and the role of footy in life? Where do you feel it really contributes to people's lives? How does that make a difference?
I think people will sort of say, well, it's just about the players or the coaches or the administration staff or support staff. But at Port Melbourne, we pride ourselves on being a very much community-led, a community organisation. We love to see ways and try ways and test ourselves on what we can do in the broader community. The vaccination centre, perfect example. We're helping the Port Melbourne Medical Clinic vaccinate our community that we're part of. So if that's that small difference that we've made, then that's a massive thing for us. And so, I think football, at the elite level, obviously it's a bit more of an entertainment package, and it's about, wins, losses and everything else. For us, it's about getting more people engaged in fitness, in exercise. If they just walk to the game or walk to the ground and watch a game of footy and walk home, they've had more exercise than what they would have the day before. So there's a small change to them. So it's about getting that interaction and getting more people involved in any way we can. It could be a player, a sponsor, a supporter, just a local resident walking past, watching something different. Yeah.
It's and it really speaks to that need that that seems to have come up, in the context of COVID, of the need for connection with others, and a feeling of belonging and not feeling isolated. I can see sport is a great connector. So thank you for sharing, or just fleshing out those three core needs. So how the triangle works, it works on an inner level and an outer level. So the inner level, it speaks to, generally these core needs are there for a reason, Paul. So they are actually an inherent part of you, like they are really at the core fabric of who you are as an individual. And why they're dear to you is that probably at some point in your life, you've experienced the lack of them. They've been taken away. You've experienced what it's like to maybe not have all the experiences that you wanted, or to be cut off from growth, or maybe you have experienced disrespect. Maybe you have experienced, that inability to make a difference and the frustration that goes with that. And it's important because sometimes we get scared of the thing that we're lacking in, but in fact, when you think about it, that's where the passion comes from. You have to have known what it's like to be to have something taken away. So it's a bit like maybe, we wouldn't really crave a long, hot summer unless we knew a bitterly cold winter. Without winter, summer would lose its luster. And this is a bit like that we have to have known some kind of loss in our lives. We have to have had something taken away and go through the pain of that in order to really value it now, as our wiser, older self.
Yep.
So it's important that as you've isolated these and identified them, that you really do live these needs, that you do bring them into your life. And so what the triangle does is it helps you identify the most important one, which is really your highest value, your North Star, and that is to make a difference. So that's absolutely why you're here. But also it tells you the path to achieving that, how you do that, and this has come from you. So pretty much it's through experience and respect that you make a difference. So that, if you like, is your personal mission statement. Probably the shortest mission statement on record. It's not like normal corporate mission statements, but they're usually too hard to remember anyway. So thinking about that through experience, so that's really speaking to constantly throwing yourself in the deep end, doing those videos even when you don't want to, and whatever the next step is going to be that's going to involve taking you out of your comfort zone, doing that as your modus operandi, basically, and encouraging your players to do the same. And so by doing that, you're constantly growing, and by constantly growing, you're building your own self-respect, and also garnering the respect of others. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, and so by following that path and staying true to that path, that's how you will continue to make a difference, because it's going to keep you alive. It's going to keep you engaged with what you're doing. If you allow yourself to go into the comfort zone, I've done enough, everyone's happy, I can sit back, that's where you'll start to get back into what you felt in the corporate sector. So that's your personal mission and vision. And then basically, once you really live that, and it sounds like you probably are right now, then if you satisfy the inner needs, this is increasingly how you show up in the outer world. So there's that expression, when you can get out of your own way, that's when you really are of service. So what's interesting here is that the triangle also defines your why, what, and how. So your why is always what's at the top of it. So it is making a difference. So can you see that potentially, if you stay on this path and continue to grow, that your gift to others could potentially be showing how they could also make a difference? Can you see that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. I think probably has come out throughout this session that I really do enjoy helping other people and helping them get to where they want to be and do what they want to do. So yeah, it's something I can certainly see coming out more broadly.
Yeah, even if you never actually say that in any address or any speech that you give or any pep talk, just the fact that you are being you and doing that, it's like there's a ripple effect, and you might not even be able to quantify it, but that's the effect that you're having just by you fulfilling your needs. That's how you can then inspire others. You don't have to give, the Sermon from the Mount. You don't have to give the great speech. Just by you showing up as you're already having that effect. So that's really the why. That's what gets you out of bed. And interestingly, what you bring to the table is respect. So what you offer to others, not just yourself, but to others, is to develop respect. And I imagine that would mean either for fellow team members, members of the opposing teams, people who might not even be part of the community, people who might set themselves up as adversaries, but starting to see the world from a broader picture rather than, it's us versus them. It's respecting all people and the context, the environment, from whatever walk of life. Do you feel that that's true to what you are putting on the table?
Yeah, I think so. I think, as I say, you try and do things a little bit differently. And obviously through COVID, we've had a lot more meetings with the other CEOs of the standalone clubs and the other AFL clubs, just trying to help each other out and be there as a sounding board or to throw up different ideas and different solutions. So yeah, definitely something I can agree with as well.
Yeah. So, and then the final one is the how, and that's experience. So this is how you teach others and how you make a difference for others is by encouraging them through different experiences. So I'll ask you on this one, Paul, how would you see experience, you encouraging different experiences for others? How do you see that playing out in your current role, or how could you see it playing out more in what you're doing?
It's about working with people, and if you understand the person and what they're trying to achieve, you can then best understand how to help lead them or share which experience or knowledge that you have. One of the key things for me, and especially it happened in corporate world and projects, but also in more so now in sporting world, is you have to be prepared to fail or make mistakes, and then it's how you learn from those. So back to what we talked about before with fear. Everyone fears COVID and fears what's going to happen next. But if you learn from it and make sure that you learn and you act on those learnings, then you'll continue to improve and enhance your own experience. So, you're going to not win every game of football that you play. You're going to drop a mark. You're not going to deliver a project on time. Some of the changes that you try and adapt and bring into an organisation won't work. And some people won't like them and some people will. So it's how you deal with that experience and what you do the next step, and how you, as I said, learn from that change and that experience, and what the next way you do it, can you do it differently?
Yeah.
So if you've missed a goal, can you kick it differently the next time, or do you line up slightly better? Or is it, you went for a mark and you dropped your head and you didn't watch the ball into your hands? Little simple things, but if you can learn from those, if you've made a change in the office and it hasn't worked, how do you then adapt to make it better, or what do you need to change to get it to work properly?
Yeah, I love that, Paul. And what I'm hearing there is what you're doing actually is reframing winning and losing. So, and you know what sport is all about? It's all about winning and losing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, you either win or you lose. And it's so easy for us to go out with that mindset and think of the pressure that puts on the players. But if you're reframing that as, no, it's an experience, whether you've won or lost, it's an experience. And the goal is, what did you take from it? That's that's what I'm hearing is your how.
Yeah.
That's basically how you lead. Does that sound right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's just looking at every scenario slightly differently to see what you can do with it, and unpack the bad bits and assess those, drop the bits you don't need anymore, but continue to use your key strengths and bits that work, make sure you enhance those and talk about them and communicate it.
Yeah. I love that. I really like how you're actually bringing a reframe to, an environment that could even be potentially divisive, but you've and could bring about, I know how difficult it is, dealing with loss and the shame that comes with that. So if you can start to diffuse that, I can imagine that the players would become more enthusiastic, more impassioned, and less obsessed about winning and losing. I think that's really valuable. So there's one final piece that I'll add to this. I'm a great believer. We have a tendency to run away from our fears, and you've spoken about fear today, and it's been really interesting hearing your take on it. And I'm a great believer that the more we face our fears, the more likely we are to actually achieve what we want. So there's one final piece to this, which I'll share with you. And if we just look at if you like, it's like the star on top of the Christmas tree, the piece that's at the top of the triangle, which is making a difference. And if you imagine that really is your North Star, the thing that guides you to the future, and that's for you the most important thing, and you've isolated that, and it's brilliant that you have, because when we get clarity on that, life becomes much easier. We have our own internal compass to follow. And so in order to preserve that, there's an exercise that we can do. It only take a minute, just to become aware of the thing that might stop you doing that. So are you happy to play along with this, Paul?
Yep, why not?
Well, it's another experience, right? So just imagine that your bright future sits on your right-hand side, and that is all about how you make a difference in your particular way, through sharing experiences with people, allowing them to experience what it's like, what life is like, without the shame of loss or the egoic space of victory. That it's all about experience and respect, and that's how you achieve making a difference. So that sits out there on the right-hand side, but that was created by the lack of it. Okay, so that's the definition of a need, something that comes from having experienced the lack, when it's something that you really, really care about, that's part of who you are. So imagine flipping 180 degrees to the left and coming to what sits on the other side of making a difference, the other side of that, the opposite of that. And if you were to sum that up in one word, how would you describe that? What's the opposite to making a difference in your book?
I guess it's probably just the fail, failing at doing something, not being able to help somebody or not being able to fulfill what you're trying to achieve would probably be the thing.
Yeah. And so would you say failure is the word?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And how would that make you feel if instead of making a difference that you were in that place of failure where you weren't able to help others?
I guess it sort of takes me back to my corporate days, and that's how I felt when I made the change. I just felt that I wasn't being able to help other people and deliver on what I wanted to deliver on and stay true to my own ethos and what I wanted to achieve. So I felt really low and down and just felt as though I wasn't able to move or get any better at things that I was trying to do.
Yeah. And so if you could imagine that the rest of your life was in that space, at that failure space, how would that make you feel going forward?
It'd be pretty disheartening, I think.
Yeah.
But I would certainly be trying to find a way to get out of it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I have a model called the fifth door and 5 doors, and that would be your definition of doorway 1, what I call living hell, which is that place of failure where you fail to live up to who you are, that where your true potential lies in the ability to help others and make a difference to their lives. And so being behind that door, they're having that sense of failure. And so thank you for being willing to take part in that, by the way. What I invite people to do is to not run away from that door, but walk through it every now and then and allow yourself to feel that deepest fear. Because sometimes, and I run into this in the entrepreneur space, what can happen is that we fear it so much that we turn our back on it and run away and try to outrun it. And that's when it can come and, smash us in the face. So it can make a lot of sense to actually face that deepest fear, that fear of failure, and be okay with that. And it's almost by embracing that and being okay with that it's not going to haunt us in the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much, Paul, for taking part in this exercise. And if you've been listening to this, one of the reasons we go through the magic triangle exercise is just to show you that if you are sitting on the fence of your life and you are feeling a bit lost and unclear, it doesn't take long at all actually to get clear. It's just a process. I can certainly, if you're listening to this, I can certainly help you with that. I'd like to finish now, Paul, just on basically for someone who is in that space right now where because of COVID or whatever, they're feeling really down, and we're hearing a lot about, mental health issues, and that seems to be coming to the fore now, which probably isn't a bad thing, that at least we're talking about it. But someone who might be feeling, like you spoke to that fear of failing, of not making a difference, maybe getting into that space of nihilism and what's the point. So what would you say to someone who's in that space?
I think all humans know when they're ready for change and they know they need to do something differently, but it's easy to stay in your comfort zone and just sit there and let things go and hope that things will get better. So you've just got to be self-driven to want to make a difference, so work out the positives and the negatives for the thing that you're in and just have a go. I think is the biggest thing, is back yourself, make the change, do whatever you need to do to get out of that spiral, because it's well worth it.
Paul Malcolm, thank you so much. I really appreciate the fact that you have been a guest on Wake the F Up and everything that you've shared about your journey. I'm sure it's inspiring to anyone who's listening to that, who might be in that stuck space or wondering if there's a bigger life out for them. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
You have just listened to another enlightening episode of Wake the F Up with Janet Hogan. To find out more about the breakthrough, guided way to get off the hamster wheel and seize a life of freedom and fulfillment, visit janethogan.com/podcast for access to the show notes and to learn more about Janet's breakthrough work. Just remember, finding your true path isn't potluck, it's a process. Until next time.